About Huntsville, I'm kind of completing the full cycle about Huntsville. I was born and raised there. I was born there because my mother was there at the time, and I wanted to be near her. As a baby, you need a mother, to kind of take care of you. And my three brothers were also born there because mother was there for them also. So it's sort of a family tradition that we're born where our mother is, and our father also. But now I'm 80 years old, and I've just purchased the high school from which I graduated in 1943. When the I-45 bypassed the town, the demographics changed in Huntsville, so they built a whole new school, a bunch of school buildings, big ones. And the old high school is pretty much surplus. It was not used for anything much, and so they decided to tear it down. And they got a big bill for getting rid of it, $90,000, which they couldn't afford. And somebody said, "Why don't we just sell the high school?" Duh. So the minute when I found out it was for sale, I called and bought it, and we're fixing it up now. I'll be moving there 3 days a week to do large paintings. The gym is fantastic. The Sam Houston in Huntsville. Why Huntsville? Because it's where Sam Houston spent the last 4 years of his life, and our family connection with it. And a great hero to me also. We all grew up with a book called 6'6" by Marcus James. And so we all thought that Sam Houston was 6'6". It turns out he was more like 6'2", but we don't mince numbers when it comes to that. So I made the statue 10 times his life size, which is a little over 67 feet tall. When I was building that, I used a cement mixer made in Canada that we got, a cheap one, sort of a Sears type deal, and it lasted up to the very last day, 3 long years. I was cranking out that concrete every day, and the day that we were putting the head up on the statue, it conked. It died right there on the spot. And it was kind of like a faithful donkey pulling the load all through your career, and it dies. So we had to give it an honorable funeral. So we had the crane lift it up and put it inside the head and then down to the heart level of Sam Houston. So that's where that little piece of broken. So if anybody goes inside in the future to for any reason, archivists or anything, they're going to find that cement mixer in there and wonder what the hell it's doing there. The World War II was winding down, and it was 1945, and so no more pilot training, but they were going to be bringing back soldiers from France or from Europe and taking supplies over. So I got in the Air Transport Command and had a really tough job there. And my job was I was on the flight crew, was to fly to France about every week, spend about a couple of nights in France. It was a 3-legged flight in those days. We'd fly to either Newfoundland or Gander, or Iceland and Paris, or Bermuda, Azores, Paris. Either way, it was a 3-day trip. And I would buy a carton of cigarettes for $10. No, $1 a carton, 10 cents a piece, and pack my B4 bag full of cigarettes and go to Paris. And I was told where to go to sell them, to the Café de la Paix in the Place Opéra. I'll never forget that. And here I'm a young soldier walking in with this big bag. The maitre d' sees me and knows exactly why I'm there, so he says, "Back in the restroom, so go back there, unload all this stuff." He gives me a stack of bills. French money in those days was sort of like colored tissue paper. It was beautiful colors, and they were stuck together with pins. And so I was getting 1,000 francs, which is about $10 per carton. So 10 times my money, not too bad. So I have all this money, a corporal by now in the Air Force, going up to the Champs-Élysées, eating in the best restaurants, seeing the best everything. Remember, at the next table was Michelle Morgan and Jean Gabin. She was absolutely gorgeous, peaches and cream. And here I was a little guy, living high off the hog, and doing this for about a year, seeing Paris for the first time, falling in love with Paris. Tough work, but somebody's got to do it, And I served my country, I thought, as best I could. Paris for a 21-year-old kid from Huntsville, Texas, is a contrast, to say the least. Uh, with an art gallery, a bookstore on every corner, and a sidewalk cafe on every other corner, full of people interesting to talk to. The American colony in Paris, obviously, were people that were there, students like myself, or people that chose to live there. A great segment of the best of America, really, I met in Paris. Other students, one of them became my lifelong friend, Herb Mears, the artist here who now lives in Houston. He was from New York then, and he taught me an awful lot. And I learned from just being in France, just sitting in the sidewalk cafe and talking. There's a saying that on every sidewalk cafe there's a 21-year-old genius. The problem is finding somebody 40 with a little bit of talent, which means that everybody is filled with hope about their future. And some make it and some don't. And that's the interesting thing about Paris. I think anybody that lives there long enough has to absorb the beauty of it, the intellectual stimulation that it gives. Because French are smarter than other people. They truly are. They're well educated. Their language is a lot more concise than English. It's easier to say what you mean in French rather than English, which has a lot of wow and stuff that's meaningless. You know, in English, it's pretty much the way you say something that transmits the message, whereas in French, it's the words itself. Of course, they have slang and ways of saying stuff, but it's a precise, concise language. Then when he was elected president, I thought he'll be too busy to ever oppose for me now. So a friend of mine that I've known since the day he came to Houston, who was one of George Bush's greatest friends, a fellow named Jack Steele, said, let me talk to the president. Once he's president, you don't call him George Bush anymore. He's the president. And anyhow, I got a letter straight back saying, come on up. And I can pose for you on a given day. It was October 26, 89, I think it was. And he'd been in office about 10 months by then. And so Jack Steele met me at the airport in a White House limousine, Marines driving and all that. So we went to the White House. The Marine aide took my bags, and they, of course, knew who I was. You have to check through, and he called me by name. And he says, follow me, please. And he marched me up the elevator to the second floor and put my bags down in the Lincoln bedroom. And says, this is where you'll be staying tonight. Is it all right? And I says, I'll have to cancel my reservation over at the other place. I arrived about 3:30, and I was had gotten into the room and changed clothes and had my cameras already. Had brought 2 cameras to take pictures of President Bush. And he said on the phone, would you mind if we bring our White House photographer up also? A gal from Philadelphia. I said, God, please do. I'm nervous. I mean, my cameras could even fail. Anyhow, he and she came up, and he started posing for me, and I shot a lot of pictures of him. And but he was standing there just with his sort of hands in his pocket. And it wasn't a pose that will really make a statue, but that's all I could get at the time. I mean, I didn't want to think of other ways for him to pose. Well, we were having dessert and after dinner drinks, and one of the White House staff came in and said, Mr. President, 10 minutes. So he said, eat up, drink up. We have to be out of here exactly in 10 minutes. So it's all very organized in the White House. So we'd finished. We marched to the elevator at the same time, went down to the first floor, got into. There were 4 cars. There were 2 limousines, identical, one for the president, and the Aga Khan and his wife were in that one, and Barbara. And then another one for Jack Steele and myself, and another couple, the head of the EPA, that had been invited there. And Barbara says, we love to invite them. They're so good to look at. They're so pretty. The guy, very good-looking guy, and his wife, the head of the EPA at the time. We left the White House, went to Kennedy Center, and of course the traffic was stopped at each spot. It's the way that's organized is really kind of amazing. You feel so good being in this entourage all the traffic is stopping for you, and you cruise right on through. So we went in to the up some stairs to the presidential box upstairs, and they had white wine for us or whatever. Everybody drinks Perrier instead of white wine except me and Jack Steele. And the Secret Service guy said, there's a little diagram of the presidential box there. 8 seats, 2 and 2 with a little aisle in the middle. You and Mr. Steele will go in first, and the president will follow you, and then the Aga Khan and the EPA guy. So Jack Steele and I walked in first. Well, people in the audience were standing waiting for the president to appear to applaud. We walked in first, and they started applauding, and we went, and they thought, who the hell are those two guys? You know, it was really funny. And then the next morning, I was having the breakfast that I mentioned, and Barbara, I saw her in the distance wearing a bright blue terry cloth robe, and her hair was dripping wet. She had done her morning laps. She always does 20 laps in the pool in the morning, and so she came to talk to me, and my camera was there on the coffee table, and I looked at her and I looked at the camera, and she says, don't even think about it. I was scheduled to leave there about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. I kept looking for excuses to tarry and stuff. Finally just had to give it up and leave because it was a great experience. Nothing like it, really. I mean, when I was 16, 17 years old, I was going to be Glenn Miller. I was going to have an orchestra, Tommy Dorsey. I mean, art was something I fell into because I wasn't a good enough musician to make a living, if anybody can make a living, no matter how good they are. But maybe it was a good thing for the world of music that I wasn't that good. But it's always been in my DNA. There's no question about it. I think anybody, when they're any kid, between the ages of 13 and 16, the influences of music are just so important, almost overwhelming. That's the reason so many kids today play guitars, and music is so big. It was big with me too. That was before guitars. There weren't even any electric guitars then. In fact, electricity hadn't even been invented. Our guitars were actuated with oil lamps and kerosene and candles. We didn't have electric guitars. Picasso, when he was 90 years old, said, I'm spending my time now trying to paint the way I did when I was 12. In other words, he got too sophisticated, knew too much, and lost the freshness that an untrained person has. That's the reason that any work of children is always good. Any school kid will do a rainbow and a heart or something, a flower, and it's always good. It's practically never bad because the inhibitions haven't come in yet. They haven't been told what to do and what's good and what's bad. If you're trying to paint something realistically, like a portrait, you're obligated to render as best you can what you're seeing. That's not that creative. It's a great technique. It's a great skill if you can do that. Whereas if you start doing variations on the subject that you like, then that gets into the creative part of painting. And that, of course, is most interesting. We're talking about improvisation. It's in music as well as in painting. It's when you take a theme that's well known and start making light changes on it, never so that it's not recognizable, but it gets another dynamic when you start adding stuff to it. For example, Stardust, a song that everybody knows pretty much, is that's pretty much the basic thing. But when you go with improvising, That's not good, but that shows the point. And in my painting, I painted spring trees and bottles and people and everything, always recognizable, but in my own style due to improvisation from the original look, that they come off being a very personal statement. And people don't confuse my paintings with anybody else's because they have that style which is personal to me. And music, jazz playing, everybody knows the difference between, or jazz people know the difference between Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie. They might be playing the same notes, but it's their stylistic interpretation. I've written one piece of music. It's kind of a classical march piece. Actually, it was called The Winds of Change, and it was written to be played, hopefully, when the George Bush Bronze, which is now at the Bush Intercontinental Airport, was to go to A&M. That was the first place it was to go. And there was going to be a choral work to accompany the unveiling of that, which is called The Winds of Change, which is the name of the statue. A friend, Art Gottschalk, who was involved with the Houston Youth Symphony, arranged for them to perform it at a theater downtown. So I have a CD of that. So one of my classical pieces has been literally performed legitimately, and that's the only piece I have that I wrote that's been performed. This is a story about the mystery of who stole Beethoven's Fifth. Beethoven wrote a piece of music and invited 10 of his friends over to play it. It was a BYO party, bring your own bottle. So you have Beethoven and 10 friends, or 11 bottles. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 bottles on that table. So Mozart, when he saw the music, said, you know, you've written this in the key of B, or 5 sharps. Be so easy to transpose to the key of A, 3 sharps. So we represent that by switching B to A and A to B. So B goes over to A, and A goes to where B was. Okay, now they finished transposing. Beethoven came back to get his bottle, and it's gone. Somebody has stolen Beethoven's Fifth. Let's count the bottles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bottles. And there were clearly 11 bottles there a second ago. The other composers apologized to Beethoven, but the apologies fell on deaf ears. But they looked under the table, and sure enough, there was a half-drunk bottle of wine, but that turned out to be Schubert's Unfinished. So the mystery of who stole Beethoven's Fifth still remains unsolved to this day. The cello downtown has a trio behind it that are life-size, 6 foot tall, of a flautist, a violinist, and a bass player. And they don't have arms, but the instruments are interesting the way they go around. So I thought I'd like to do another one of standing figures. I thought 4 figures better than 3, and who else better than the Beatles? I love the Beatles. Everybody likes the Beatles. And the guitars, the drum. So I saw the variety in that subject as a possible thing I'd like to do. So that's how the Beatles were conceived. Most people think that I wanted to do the Beatles, and I did the Beatles. That's not exactly true. I wanted to do 4 standing figures in an abstract way, and the Beatles became the choice for that. And I chose, of course, they have such a variety of costumes. The Sgt. Pepper period was what I saw for that, because I had a nightclub here in Houston in 1967, the Summer of Love, called Love Street Light Circus and Feel Good Machine, and it was hot. Some friends that owned a building downtown on Allen's Landing called and said, we got this building, it'd make a good art studio. Why don't you come down and rent a floor from us? So I didn't want an art studio downtown, but I went down and looked at this top floor of this building that's still there on Allen's Landing and thought, wow, this is it. This would make the club. I'd have to build a balcony and whatnot and put in restrooms and all. So I leased the place for the summer, and they built a big exterior stairway, which is still there, to get up to the 3rd floor. It was, we had a big area, huge mattress in the middle of the room called the zonk out area, and everybody was lying on this mattress. We had tables and chairs, but nobody used those, to watch the light show projected on 3 walls. We had 14 projectors going all at once with all the fluids and splashes of liquids and regular stills of slides of everybody. It was so popular. We had all the local bands play there, the Fever Tree and 13th Floor Elevators and all of Matchbox. I can't remember the names now, but there were A440. Anyhow, the two guys that are now ZZ Top, Billy Gibbons and Rocky Hill, were in different bands. One played with American Blues, the other played with, I think, Moving Sidewalks. And they might have met at my place, I'm not sure. Then they got together and became ZZ Top. So this was early days when the influence of that club had a lot of influence in the town. But I don't regret 1 second of that summer of '67. I was 40 years old. I mean, all my clients were 15 to 17, 18, and I, never trust anybody over 30. I don't know if they trusted me, but they seemed to. In any case, it was great. I really love that period. I think the future in art for young people coming up today is not in oil painting or acrylic painting, not much in painting at all, but in computers. I think it's obvious. The problem is it's unlimited what you can do, and there's so much effort that's not very good because it's just too vast. But there's been no Picasso of computer art yet, but someday there might be, and I don't have a clue what that'll look like. But the possibilities are so vast that they're overwhelming to somebody like me of the other generation, because we had a box of paints with 50 colors. Now you've got photo works and everything in the world you can do with paintings. They can, all the motion, the kinetics, everything. It's just a vast world. So the future's got to be there, and I don't have a clue what it's going to look like. I think the best shot I have of leaving a legacy will be in my big outdoor monumental sculptures, because of their size and their permanence, and they're too big to move. I mean, the Sam Houston was engineered to withstand 5 times 100-mile-an-hour gale. I don't know what that means, maybe 120 miles an hour. The one I worry about a little bit is the Virtuoso, the cello, downtown, because it's on commercial property, and it might be that the value of that property someday will be more than that building that's there justifies, in which case they'll move it, but hopefully they'll put it in some other public place. I expect that they will, because everybody seems to like it a lot. But the last few years I have to work, I'm looking at big outdoor sculpture projects, the Beatles being the most recent, but I have 2 or 3 others in mind that aren't quite clear in my mind yet what they will be, but I'd like to do 2 or 3 more of those before I finally don't have the energy to work anymore. Okay, this is completely free form. There's going to be a message here too. Is that cold?
Not bad.
Sure helps to know how to spell at this point right here, because I could really mess up. That's the risk of spelling stuff backwards. But the reason I do that is to get the center.
Yeah.
The C is in the center pretty much.
Yeah.
And so much for that. That brush stays right there. And a new brush paints blue. Is blue any colder than red? About the same?
I think red was colder.
Really? Should be hotter because it's a warm color.
It is.
The blue should be coldest of all, but I tell you, that's nature. You can't depend on your class in physics to tell you everything. You decided to name your little girl Haley.
Yes.
H-A-L-E-Y.
Yes. I think that's how the comet is spelled.
The comet, oh, Haley's comet, right. Oh, it is. Well, we got to have a comet. Yeah, glad you told me that. That's the comet streaking across the wide, wide belly. Okay.
Right below the rise of the belly button.
Why Haley? I mean, for the comet, or was there family?
We bought a naming book.
Oh, yeah.
And Haley means hero.
Haley means hero, right.
So she's going to be a hero.
That's right, going to be hero. Because my name means beloved in Hebrew. And I've tried to live up to that. Missed a couple times.
Yeah, her whole name is very noble.
Very noble. Good.
Is it different painting on a...
Had too much water on the brush. There, so.
round canvas? No, I'll only be able to see the bottom half of this in pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the top half shades the bottom half pretty well.
Very well, yes it does.
I remember in Russia, there was a cousin of a guy we went with who had the same name. And the guy we went with is from Houston. He has a gypsy band. And his cousin showed up in a green sweater. And it was raining like crazy in Moscow. And the top half of his sweater shaded the bottom half. It was like it was an umbrella, so it was dark green and light green on the bottom.
Kind of like that, yeah.
Never forget that look, yeah. Greg Harbor is the Houston guy that has, whose cousin it was. If I sign and number this, it'll be number 1 of 1. There can't be a second one, can there? It's
the next time I get pregnant.
That's right. Yeah. This is an original. This guy in France that I used to know that wrote short stories, and one of them was about Picasso who tattooed a guy all over. And the guy died, and Picasso's work was so valuable that it became a point whether or not to preserve his work and skin this guy and put him in a museum or bury him like his family wanted. So that was a big legal problem, and it covered the French press for weeks and weeks, and finally, I guess not weeks, but days, and finally they went to Picasso himself to get his take on this whole thing. In the meantime, he had forgotten all about it and was by then twisting coat hangers to look like sculpture and could care less. He says, it's not my problem. You guys work it out.
So what did they do?
I don't know. It's just a story. I mean, I don't know. But it's a good point. If you have a work of art and it's somebody's skin, they obviously own the work of art. But do they have the right to destroy it when they die? And that's what the whole argument was about.
Do you tattoo?
Huh?
Have you ever tattooed?
I've never tattooed. I never have. Now, I've never been on the giving nor the receiving end of a tattoo.
Well, if you ever begin.
I don't think I will. I mean, I don't know what it would say except E equal MC squared, and that's already been said.
Yeah.
Tattooing is very popular.
It is.
Even in small towns in Maine, they have tattoo parlors, I've been told.
I have a very dear friend who became a tattoo artist.
Really? Yeah.
In Austin. She's covered.
Covered the waterfront. Ah. Okay. Back to red. This is the nice, softest canvas I've ever painted on. It just gives so nicely, you know. Well.
Thank you.
What a compliment, huh?
So working on the stretch marks.
Yep.
Lack thereof.
Yep. I could put a little smiley face on the belly button, but
I wondered what you were going to do
I
when
don't
you got
know.
to it.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a
It's kind of a different
texture.
surface, yeah. Yeah. Kind of like getting your face painted at this circus or at the art fair, except
It's kind of a pre-birth face painting.
yeah.
Her.
I wonder if
It's
she
very
knows.
nice that you
I wonder if
think.
she has a clue what's going on out here in this world.
She can hear us.
She can hear us
Kind of.
talking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, Salvador Dali claimed that he had prenatal conscience, that he heard everything. And
Really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, he claims that. Well, there was a great, Mel Brooks did a thing about the 2-hour-old baby that could speak, had the ability to speak, and the baby remembered everything and said, well, they said, you are a boy. Are you happy about being a boy? He says, I'm a boy? I didn't know that. Nobody ever told me. But, but he said, he remembered. He liked Cary Grant. I said, you like Cary Grant? Yeah, because my mama used to go to the movies and take me, and I could hear it through the muffling. Hey, Cary Grant. And I knew it was Cary Grant because I could tell. I didn't believe a word of it. It's.
She does respond to some voices already.
Does she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She knows a couple.
Well, how did she respond?
By moving.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Who? Yours and somebody else's?
Her daddy's.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And moves?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Almost, even if she's not being spoken to.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean you can be speaking to each other and she will hear that? And
She just always seems to start moving when he starts talking. Yeah.
Well, our dog is like that. She responds when we're not talking to her. I don't make any further comparisons at that point. All right. Now, we go into a lovely purple phase here.
Like that color.
Yeah. The purple over the blue gets some nice shades. You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Are you kind of tired?
Mm-hmm.
You can sit down anytime. I'm just about finished. It's about 2 more minutes. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just keeping my knees bent. So
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The purple over the white gives some nice lavender shades. We're just really almost through. Should I sign it?
Yes, I think so.
Do I have to give my right name? Is that 2 D's or 1? Yeah. Okay.
How is it?
You're looking good. A little bit of white down here and normally I sign something in the corner, but there is no corner here, so I have to just fake
No
it.
corner on the round ball.
Yeah. Okay. We're just practically done. Okay. Where to sign it? Across the. I'll sign it this way. Yeah. I'll sign it in blue. And 1 of 1, which means unique. You're done.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! You need to see it in a mirror, though, so you can see it yourself.
I would love to.
Can I help you down?
In just a second.
Yeah. Things are never finished till they're just finished. A finished sculpture is one that is out of your hands, that you can't get to anymore. Sculpture is never finished. You can just keep doing something to it forever. We're limited on this.
We've got until August 12th.
What time is it now? Yeah. Yeah. I think we're finished. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
Okay, when I first met you, you worked at King Biscuit.
Yes.
And the owner, Roger, is going to be very jealous because he thought we should do this over there.
Oh.
And somebody get the word King Biscuit into the art. And I said, I don't know if we can do that.
Thank goodness we didn't do that.
No, we didn't do that. But he'll see it, and he'll.
Oh, sure.
And we just mentioned his name anyway,
We
so
did.
that's good enough.
We did.
Seemed like. And you are due
On August 12th.
August 12th, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
She will be Leo, I guess.
She is.
Leo.
A mere 3.5 weeks away.
Yeah.
And so when you first proposed the idea to me, I thought, wow, that's kind of strange. How would we ever do that? But it's really been a unique experience because, you know, being involved in art at any level is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The creation of
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
is wonderful. And being the canvas, I mean, that just makes you kind of, you know, you can't do without a canvas. So,
No, you can't do that very often either, can you?
No, when I get pregnant again, I'll let you know.
All right, okay.
This is practice number 1.
Yeah, you're just getting wound up here. I think on your 8th baby, I'll have this down. I'll have this technique pretty much under control.
We'll work on 8.
Yeah.
It's a nice round
I think
number.
painting is better than sculpture, don't you think? Because curving on stone.
That would be difficult.
I think so, yeah. I think we were wise to choose painting rather than sculpture.
She might have noticed that a little bit more, I think.
Well, you know,
Possibly.
she'll see this one day. She'll see
She
photographs
will.
of all this stuff.
That was the most exciting part,
Yeah.
you know, is that she is going to have had this happen before she was even born.
And we'll ask her if she remembers anything about it and see what she says.
For
Salvador
sure.
Dali remembers all post-birth experiences, he said, but there are no other witnesses that corroborated him on that. He could have just made that up.
Well, but I think that there are others who say that they remember things even before they were born. I wasn't one of them, but I think that there are others.
Oh yeah, I remember World War I. Oh yeah. You know, and charge. I remember that pretty well. I remember when Lindbergh flew the Atlantic, but I was 4 months old then. I really was, yeah. So
That's cheating.
my memories of Civil War are vague, very vague. I'm not sure which side I was on, even. The blue and the gray. I mean,
They're kind of like
who
the
could
same
tell?
color.
Yeah.
Were you colorblind?
Yeah, well, when you're in the womb, hell, you can't tell color anyway. Just like dreams. So anyhow, I think we've covered this subject. Don't you think?
It's wonderful. I'm so pleased about it.
Thank you
Right
for
in time
posing.
for the baby shower. Rematch. You get one more. Next best thing to being pregnant with your tilted uterus.
Yeah, you should paint his belly, his and hers.
Switch the colors around. Instead of pink, it's blue.
Yeah.